So here we have we just talked about the future of media, and now we're talking about the future of work. And I want to start, we have a great panel here coming at this from different angles. I want to start by asking each of you, what is most preoccupying for you about the future of work? What wakes you up at night when you're trying to look into the future and think about how work evolves, or what gets you up in the morning on this issue? Clara, I'm going to start with you to answer this question.
I sleep well at night, thank you.
Yeah.
But I think we are all like Alice in the Wonderland.
Yeah.
Like the world is fascinating, and in other way, we don't know what is going on, and we don't understand anything of what is happening, or very little, and no one can predict what would happen. So I love the statement of Christophe Colomb, who says that you go far when you don't know where you go, because I think it's really what is happening today.
Can I ask you, what is your level of anxiety about how work is evolving? Are you anxious, concerned?
No, I'm not anxious. I'm curious. I'm fascinated, and I'm just trying to not understand, but to capture what is happening without trying to understand. I think we have to de-learn. My generation has been a generation where we had to be experts of anything, and we have to learn, and we have to have organization, and we have to have process. And now we have to de-learn all the things we've done. So I'm just trying to be a child again. And it's good to have a young generation with me, and I meet young startups every day, one or two every day, and that refreshes me, and it's like we have to reset ourselves every day.
And be like a child.
And be like a child, yes. Like the Little Prince.
Yeah.
Innocence is the quality that we need in the new world. Because if you come with your statement, with your certainty, and with the way you used to do before, you will fail.
Yeah.
So you have to reinvent an innocence like the Little Prince is the thing that we have to be, all of us. So be Alice and Little Prince, you can sleep well at night. You know, it was the story where our parents was telling us when we were going to bed.
Yeah. Julien, what about you? Are you kept awake at night by any questions about how work is evolving?
So on my side, I think what is pretty concerning is when you look at the employee engagement. When you look at the employee engagement, according to a recent survey, 32% of the employees in the US are engaged. So it means that 68% of the people are actually not committed to their work near their workplace. And this is super concerning. Today, the fact is these guys, they don't have access to their leaders. They don't have access to their managers, to their peers. They are not connected. Mass majority of the employees are not connected today in the workplace. And if you want to get people engaged, or at least to give them the opportunity to be engaged in a company, you need to communicate with them. You need to communicate your values. You need to communicate your mission. You need to communicate objectives, good news, bad news. At least you give them an opportunity to be engaged. So on my side, I see this as an amazing opportunity, because we are here, of course, to make the world more open and connected, and we want to give everyone a voice, so people are just more engaged and more productive.
And when you say connected, you mean literally workers who are not connected to their workplace by the internet, basically.
Yeah, I mean, let me give you a story here. So 40 years ago, if you think about the retail industry, so the way they have to share information with their workers, people, you know, in retail floors, was to print posters and to print magazines. It was 40 years ago. If you ask the same question today to large retailers, how do you communicate with your hundreds of thousands of people? They will have the same answer. We print posters and we print magazines.
Yeah. Yeah. Miguel, are you kept awake at night by questions about how work is evolving?
I think work, but also society in general, and I think it has to do with the way we're connected as humans, and similarly, the way we're developing tools to keep people connected digitally. Not many of us are thinking about physical space and about how important it is to see each other face to face, to interact, to understand, you know, the social, emotional value of being around other people in real life and not having a phone between your communication. And so what concerns me is, you know, we've seen stories of people who have built businesses, you know, separated by thousands of miles, for example, and have never even seen their partner in real life. You know, those kind of things freak me out because you're missing so much. And if you extend that to other places like education, where sounds amazing to democratize education, put education in everyone's hand, but then what happens to the relationship with the teacher or with your fellow student? So it's that sort of idea that we're pushing people away from connecting in real life at work, even at home. We're more separated than ever. So it's more of a bigger picture, but it definitely relates to work as well.
That seems like an obvious value to having people together, but it's actually not a value that is recognized by every organization or every company. We just reported on Automatic, which is the makers of WordPress software, and they actually sold their San Francisco office because none of their workers actually went there. And they believe that you can create a community of workers that's just as rich and effective if no one ever sees each other, or maybe sees each other once a year. So the question for you is, how would you articulate the importance of physical proximity, of being in the same workspace? What is that? What's the value of that?
Well, I think there's a fundamental premise that has existed for a long time, that when we come together, we more easily realize that we all mean something to each other and we're a part of something bigger than ourselves. And I think meaning in that context is important, because if everyone's individualistic and only out for themselves and looking to create their own destiny without awareness of the ones around them, I think we're all in trouble, because we're not thinking about the impact that we have in the choices that we make. So there's something about, thinking about your neighbor that governs your behavior, influences your behavior, hopefully in a positive way. When there's a barrier between, or perhaps no connection at all, I think you lose that. So, but it's definitely a bigger philosophical, societal issue.
Yeah. Julia, just before we move on, I want to ask you, your service actually tries to provide proximity to workers in the same business. Do you agree with Miguel that physical presence is important?
Yeah, at 100%. This is part of the culture of a company, and that's why, every Friday at Facebook, we have a live Q&A with Mark Zuckerberg, and he is not doing it, from his office, actually, with hundreds, if not thousands of people in the same room, because you need to feel that you are emotionally connected to someone. And culture is super important again. This is the only way for people to understand, the mission and why they are doing a job. So you need to make sure that having the tools are important, having the culture is important, but of course, interpersonal communication and connection is super important.
So I want to ask the three of you about the current macro wave of automation and artificial intelligence, which is affecting people from accountants to potentially truck drivers and others. So the big question I have for you is, how does the work that humans do change as automation and AI spread through our economy and through our companies? Clara, would you like to?
First of all, it's not a new question.
Yeah.
The question between, let's say, the war between human being and machine starts 2 centuries ago. So it's not a new issue. What is really changing is that absolutely what Julia and Miguel was saying is that we have been in a world where we have tried to give access to the vital needs to 5 billion population, which is a huge success, a huge achievement, but the price paid is very high. No motivation, continue to have poor people, cost of the planet. So automation is bringing us the tools to rebring the people inside, at the heart of the organization, and mainly in companies. And it means that we have been, the only tools we had where when there were a failure, something that didn't work, or to don't have too much risk, was organization and process. Yeah. Now we re-give to the people the capability to show their creativity, their innovation, go above the barrier. And not only we give them the tool to do that, but we need that because the machine can do the rest. Yeah. So it comes to really to a new world where we are all speaking about digital, about technology, about artificial intelligence and so on. But the key thing is the behavior. How do a CEO understand that he has to be taught by his millennium? He's not the teacher anymore. Yeah. He's the one who drives the boat, but he doesn't know the direction. So he needs to empower his employees, especially the millennials, to tell him where to go. He knows how the boat works, but he doesn't know the destination.
So there's some technologists who forecast that as many as 50% of jobs could be taken by AI and robots. Your view is very optimistic. Do you have a concern that there will be a period of unemployment or other stress on the provision of work?
The fact that jobs will change, that will be massive. It's like the agriculture in a period of time where the rural exodus was massive. That is true. But just to take the agricultural sector, now with the permaculture, you can be more productive than the classical agriculture, and you will have 100 people by hectare, where in a classical agriculture, you will have one guy for 300 hectares. So there is a lot of new traditional jobs who are recreated thanks to the digital and thanks to the artificial intelligence. So we don't know the job that will be created. There will be a lot. And yes, in banks, in insurance, and so on, some repeated jobs will disappear. But the creativity of what we can see here I don't think that will be a so difficult transition. It will be a fast transition.
Yeah.
But this is a matter of regulation. If the regulation gives the opportunity to all the creativity that we can find here at VivaTech to create new jobs, that will happen in a, I would say, peaceful way. It's not certain, but it's possible.
Yeah. Miguel, are you a techno-optimist like Clara is?
No.
Yeah.
I'm an optimist for humans.
Yeah.
In terms of tech, I definitely think that there is going to be a time when there's mass elimination of jobs, and without a societal framework that shifts to create meaning for people who aren't going to work the same number of hours or perhaps are going to be less employed, if they don't have a way to use their time more productively than consuming YouTube videos or being on Facebook, which is great, but not for 14 hours a day.
It's great for Julien.
If there's no other framework that allows people to pursue meaning and purpose, then it's going to be a big problem. We're seeing it already. I mean, there are underemployed people all over who are struggling to figure out what's their reason for existence. When AI comes along and eliminates jobs in mass quantity, that's only going to increase. So, I mean, it's a philosophical problem, but it's one that we're not talking about enough, and there are not global leaders who are addressing it and saying, what does the future of our society looks like when perhaps we have reached a place where we can pursue things that have more meaning. And certainly you have pockets of people who, have lots of time to go to yoga classes, and that's awesome. But what about the people who haven't gotten there yet, who haven't figured out, what do I do with this extra time when I could be productive in some other way than making something or being productive in a traditional sense?
And if you were handed the job of fixing that, are there any obvious approaches that you would take?
Well, I'm young in my knowledge of this subject, but it is one I'm very interested in because I do think we as WeWork have a role to play. We think we're positioned to spread the message that will help provide solutions to this. But I think you're going to have safe places where people can reevaluate who they are and what they can become. And, there are people who are pursuing this. I mean, I heard recently about, I'll say his name terribly, but Alain de Botton, who has a school for life, and he's trying to think, how do you exist in a new way, in a new framework? And that's the kind of thing that is very interesting to me, and I think is an indicator of where we need to go and what we need to be thinking about.
Yeah. Julien, why don't you come in here? So how is work changing, and are you more optimistic like Clara is or concerned like Miguel about this transition?
No, I'm pretty optimistic.
Yeah.
Fact is, again, 50% of the global workforce right now is not connected, like zero, nothing. Mm-hmm. So I understand, of course, that we are making some amazing progress around AI and automation, but first, at least for the first wave, all these tools, all these new technology will help us, just to be more productive. And that's the case. I mean, at Facebook, we are using every day hundreds of bots internally to book meeting rooms, for instance, or to answer an employee survey, or all these things. It's available on Workplace also as well for our customers. It's just a good way for them, just to improve their productivity. At some point, yes, there's a threat. There is a threat, but then our jobs will just change, and we'll move, where in a world where actually I think the emotional intelligence will be actually the key, probably, and the new currency.
Yeah. How does, when people are connected, how does it change the nature of the work that you're doing? You mentioned a few examples. Maybe you step back a little bit and.
I think what's quite interesting is you see actually kind of crazy stuff going on by giving a voice, to all your employees. Think about Renault Retail Group. So Renault, Renault Retail, they have like 12,000 employees, and they actually gave, a workplace access to all their employees. And before, when one of the employees got a diploma, and often, the first diploma he had in his life, in entire life, because he's working in a garage. The guy just had like handshake, from the store manager and say, "Good job, thank you, keep pushing, that's great." And the guy was like, "Okay, that's good." And, then he had a dinner with his family and was super happy. Now what they are doing is basically the guy is getting the diploma, but they created a group for all the people that are getting a diploma across the 18,000 people. And now the guy is not only getting a handshake, from the store manager, but sometimes a like from the CEO of Renault Retail Group.
Yeah.
And so it's this kind of thing that is creating a new emotional connection between employees and their organizations.
On this subject, I think what is very important is to see what some startup can build. If I take the example of Never Eat Alone, it's a company run by a young woman of 23 years old, and she discovered that the employee, they were always having lunch with the same people. So she built an app. She has more than 70 customers now. So you can have a lunch if you like music, if you like rock. We will discover that we are in the same building and we'll have lunch together. And now she's making an app called Work Well, where anything about the food, the conciergerie, if you want to rent a car, whatever, as an employee, you can have that there. And this is the mindset of this young woman is how can I put well-being in companies, in organizations. You have another woman, she just built an app called Job Maker. And the idea is that me, as an employee of a company, I can make my own evaluation, look at what I want to do and what I need as training to have access to the job. So I will go to the HR people and say, hey, I have already made my evaluation. There is a lot of spots where you can recreate this dialogue between inside the organization and really connect the dots and connect the people to people. What I think is very important and I come back to what you were saying, which I think is very important, the demotivation of the people. The main factor is that we considered that one people should fit to one expertise or to one job, but we didn't take in consideration the globality of the people. Yeah. And now with this transversal way and the fact that everything is collective, someone can express itself in something which is not his job. And that is really creating a new dynamic and creating new opportunities that we don't know today. And really, I understand that we can be pessimistic, but I know that the only one who will win tomorrow are the winner will be the optimistic. So I am absolutely on the optimistic side.
Yeah, and I want to come back to this question of the connection between a worker and the company or the organization that they work for. But Miguel, I want to pull you in before we do that, because I think one of the questions that you have insights into is how do the actual physical workplaces, how do we need to think about structuring them given the changing nature of work?
Well, I think the first thing is that you have to make them human-focused. I mean, every industry is different and has different actual ways that will be done specifically, but the premise has to be what's right for people at the beginning. And I think in old workplace strategy, there was many other reasons for doing things, efficiency, perhaps ideas about hierarchy were expressed through workplace, which obviously many companies have let go of, which is great. But they weren't, no one was, or very few people, except for tech companies in the last 10, 15 years, were really thinking about how do we make our team members happy? How do we make sure that they walk in the door ready to engage and excited and ready to go? And I think that's a shift that we're seeing, which is fundamental. If you walk in and you have a smile on your face, everything's better from there. Every interaction you have the rest of the day will be empowered by the fact that you're open, that you feel energized and positive. And so I think that's a great shift that's happening, not fast enough in all industry, but certainly in right now the sort of higher level, because you have to do it from a competitive standpoint. If you're trying to attract talent, you've got to create that environment, but that needs to keep flowing to all workplaces.
So they should be structured that someone's smiling at you as you walk in the door.
It matters. I mean, that's in our case, our community managers. What happens to me, it happened 10 minutes ago and backstage. Someone said, one of the best things about WeWork is I'm greeted by your community managers with a great smile.
Yeah.
And that seems so easy, but to have someone know your name and greet you with a smile, I mean, how simple and how awesome.
So WeWork is sometimes connected to the freelance economy because you provide spaces that people who aren't working as part of a traditional corporate organization. But I have a sort of broader question, which is there's the gig economy, people from Uber drivers to professional services providers are working in relationships with companies that are much less tight, actually, than they ever were. The structures are less clear. And they're sort of futurists. Say you could imagine a company at some point is just a smart contract on a blockchain where you have individual people who are delivering parts of a company in relative independence from each other. So the question for the three of you, and Miguel, maybe you can start, is where do you see this going, the relationship of individuals to corporate structures and other business structures?
I think there's a positive if you look at it from the perspective of human potential. If you take people who are able to discover their best abilities and maximize them. So if someone is incredible at a certain skill, it makes much more sense for them to use it to its fullest extent. And if they could do that for multiple companies because they're an incredible, let's say someone is the best logo designer in the world. If they're working for a company and they redo the logo every 4 years, that's an incredible waste of their talent, right? But if they're doing that for many different companies, that's a much higher use. At the same time, if they're all distributed and sitting around in their own cell somewhere, then we have a big problem. So I think what we have to figure out is, yes, we'd love to maximize people's superpowers and their potential, but they still need to be in a collaborative environment where they get to be involved in things that will expand them and allow them to grow in, horizontally as well as vertically. So the context still matters. No one wants to be only in that vertical no matter what they do. They're going to need that opportunity to go horizontally and then find another vertical. So I think you need that rich, supportive environment where that can happen. And that can happen inside of a company if it is supportive of that, or it can happen in a WeWork, which is allowing people to pursue.
Yeah, Clara, how do you see that?
Yeah,
in terms of
one of the things I think it's very important to say that we have been in a time where we're trying to have performance for performance. So the target was to make more money, to have better profitability, and now we discover that the only way to have performance is harmony. Harmony with people, harmony with customer, harmony with the diversity and the role of the woman. And for example, you see that the company who has a better diversity and has more women are more performing. So as a CEO of company and with Gonzague, my partner in Raise, what we see every day is that our job is to put harmony everywhere. And then the performance will come. And this is really fundamental today because since we don't know, we can't make projection, or we can try to make projection where we want to go, but we don't know the way because it will change, the technology will change, the way of work together will change and so on. The only way we can build that is to be sure that the people who are working with us are considered, are respected, are listened to, and they are working like a team and a moving team. It's not so the team is going on, and your job as a CEO is to have this target, harmony. I think this is the key word.
So harmony is the key word. So one thing I wanted to ask about, you mentioned earlier the different generations of workers, so the millennials coming into the workforce. I want to briefly ask you about the impact of millennials. How does the arrival of millennials change work? And also how companies are coming to take responsibility for the place of women in the workforce. So you're president of the Women's Forum, and this, I think, is among the issues that you're looking at. Actually, the first question is, how are the changes in work affecting women specifically?
I think it's a tsunami, or it's like a cooking that is blowing up now. It's like companies are trying to do the always, all the time, and now they are discovering that what the women were pushing for, it's absolutely what the millennium are asking for. The millennium, they want to have they want to work, they want to be passionate, but they want to go home on time, they want to have a family, they want to go on vacation, and they don't feel that they are not committed by asking that. They just want to be normal being and happy being and not workers. And that is really a great change that the millennium are bringing, because they are massive, and if you don't say yes to them, they leave. So that is also a huge opportunity for women, because that touches everyone in the company. The company has to reset themselves, as the millennium are asking for, because they have the power, they have the knowledge, they know how to do it, and especially the young women, they are pushing for that, and we need them. So we have no choice. We have to do it.
So I want to ask you, we're almost out of time, but I want to ask each one of you if you have, and I'll start, Julien, I'll start with you. If you had one piece of advice for students, for workers, for policymakers, for technologists, what would you, about the future of work, what they need to get right and what they need to think about, what would it be?
I think one of the key points is really to think about this collective intelligence. For now, we have a lot of silos, across organizations, inside organizations, and now it's really time, to provide tools, but also to have policies to help us, to make this possible, because we know that when we give actually everyone a voice, good things happen.
Miguel?
I would say be a student for life. Have the perspective that it's a long journey, things are going to keep changing, and you have to be willing to continue to learn, continue to change, continue to evolve all the way through, down to the last day.
Great. Clara, what is your piece of advice for technologists or policymakers or others?
I would say to policymakers is that they have to build as Emmanuel Macron was saying yesterday, the platform to make it happen. We don't want them to be makers. We want them to be allowers to build the future. Let us do the future and give us the possibility to do it and not try to make it at our place.
Yep. So we have, I think, a consensus here at the end that there is a significant wave of change coming. There is varying levels of concern about how we're going to bridge that. But ultimately, what I think you all are saying is that the continuous learning is about the thing that you all agree on is a critical element of this.
If I may just say one word, is that I'm older than you two, and since I'm 13 years old, I've heard about crises and major crises, and we have always overcome them. And we have always been able, globally at the world, to be successful. So it's why I think I'm more optimistic than you two.
Okay, so we're going to stop there. Thank you very much, Clara, Julien, Miguel.